Anya Bartleman. I'm a science librarian at the University of Washington, and I'm reading from The Chocolate War by Robert Cormier for Banned Books Week. Chapter 1. They murdered him. As he turned to take the ball, a dam burst against the side of his head and a hand grenade shattered his stomach. Engulfed by nausea, he pitched toward the grass, his mouth encountered gravel, and he spat frantically, afraid that some of his teeth had been knocked out. Rising to his feet, he saw the field through drifting gauze, but held on until everything had settled in place, like a lens focusing, making the world sharp again, with edges. The second play called for a pass. Fading back, he picked up a decent block and cocked his arm, searching for a receiver, maybe the tall kid they called the goober. Suddenly he was caught from behind and whirled violently, a toy boat caught in a whirlwind. Landing on his knees, hugging the ball, he urged himself to ignore the pain that gripped his groin, knowing that it was important to betray no sign of distress, remembering the coach's advice, or the goober's advice. The coach is testing you. He's testing and looking for guts. I've got guts, Jerry murmured, getting up by degrees, careful not to displace any of his bones or sinews. A telephone rang in his ears. Hello, hello, I'm still here. When he moved his lips, he tasted the acid of dirt and gravel and grass, and he was aware of the other players around him, helmeted and grotesque, like creatures from an unknown world. He had never felt so lonely in his life, abandoned and defenseless. On the third play, he was hit simultaneously by 3 of them. 1, the knees, his stomach, a third, and his head. The helmet, no protection at all. His body seemed to telescope into itself, but all the parts didn't fit, and he was stunned by the knowledge that pain isn't just one thing, but it's cunning and vicious and sharp here and sickening there, burning here and clawing there. He clutched himself as he hit the ground, but the ball got away. His breath went away like the ball. A terrible stillness pervaded him, and then, at the onset of panic, his breath came back again. His lips sprayed wetness, and he was grateful for the sweet, cool air that filled his lungs. But when he tried to get up, his body mutinied against movement. He decided the hell with it. He'd go sleep right there, right out on the 50-yard line. The hell with trying to get up onto the team, and screw everything, he was going to sleep. He didn't care anymore.
Hi, I'm Emily Keller. I'm a librarian at the University of Washington, and I'm here to read a little passage from the Absolutely True Diary of a Part-Time Indian by Sherman Alexie. This is for our Banned Books Week, a very important thing that we commemorate in libraries to remember about the importance of intellectual freedom and academic freedom. Tears of a Clown. When I was 12, I fell in love with an Indian girl named Dawn. She was tall and brown and was the best traditional powwow dancer on the res. Her braids, wrapped in otter fur, were legendary. Of course, she didn't care about me. She mostly made fun of me. She called me junior high honky for some reason I never understood. But that just made me love her even more. She was out of my league, and even though I was only 12, I knew that I'd be one of those guys who always fell in love with the unreachable, ungettable, and uninterested. One night at about 2 in the morning, when Rowdy slept over at my house, I made a full confession. Man, I said, I love Don so much. He was pretending to be asleep on the floor of my room. Rowdy, I said, are you awake? No. Did you hear what I said? No. I said I love Don so much. He was quiet. Aren't you going to say anything? I asked. About what? About what I just said. I didn't hear you say anything. He was just screwing with me. Come on, Rowdy, I'm trying to tell you something major. You're just being stupid, he said. What's so stupid about it? Don doesn't give a shit about you, he said, and that made me cry. Man, I've always cried too easily. I cry when I'm happy or sad. I cry when I'm angry. I cry because I'm crying. It's weak. It's the opposite of warrior. Quit crying, Rowdy said. I can't help it, I said. I love her more than I've ever loved anybody. Yeah, I was quite the dramatic 12-year-old. Please, Rowdy said, stop bawling, okay? Okay, I said, I'm sorry. I wiped my face with one of my pillows and threw it across the room. Jesus, you're a wimp, Rowdy said. Just don't tell anybody I cried about Dawn, I said. Have I ever told anybody your secrets? Rowdy asked. No. Okay then, I won't tell anybody you cried over a dumb girl. And he didn't tell anybody. Rowdy was my secret keeper.
Hello, I am Ricardo Gomez, and I am the chair of ISC, which is the Information and Society Center, a center here at the University of Washington that focuses on social and cultural aspects of information science. And I want to welcome you to the Readout for Eliza event as part of the Banned Books Week in the US. This event is to honor the memory of Eliza Dresang. Eliza was one of our faculty members here at the iSchool, who was a champion not only of early literacy, but also of intellectual and academic freedom. And the Banned Books Week was very dear to her. So we're holding this event so that all of you can come and read out loud out of your favorite banned book. I will read for you out of my favorite banned book in honor of Eliza. And that is from Where the Wild Things Are. Once the kid gets out of home, when he came to the place where the wild things are, they roared their terrible roars and gnashed their terrible teeth and rolled their terrible eyes and showed their terrible claws. Till Max said, "Be still," and tamed them with the magic trick of staring into all their yellow eyes without blinking once. And they were frightened and called him the most wild thing of all, and made him king of all the wild things. And now, Max cried, let the wild rumpus start.
Hi, my name is Mary Dixon. I am the Assistant Director for Corporate and Foundation Relations here at the iSchool. And part of what attracted me to the iSchool was that for many years I have been a lover of books and libraries. And when I was young, I spent many hours in libraries pouring through all the books for children and young adults. And one of the most influential books for me and a lot of other people my age is this book, Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret, by Judy Blume. And this is a book about a young girl named Margaret who is 12, and she is dealing with a lot of concerns that many young adolescent girls have. She's just moved to a new school, so she's trying to fit in with a new friend group. She is concerned with changes happening in her body, and on top of that, she's also experimenting with religion and really trying to find her place and what God means to her. And I believe this book often shows up on the, it's one of the frequently challenged books because of the frank way that it talks about changing adolescent bodies and religion as well. But I know that it was incredibly influential for me because it really spoke directly to my experiences growing up. And I am not going to read the famous passage that many people remember, which is the I must increase my bust. I'm not going to read that, but I will read from one of the moments when Margaret is talking to God and really, you know, sharing some of what she's going through. So this happens right before she's headed to a party that's being thrown by some of her classmates. And she says, "Are you there, God? It's me, Margaret. I hate to remind you, God. I mean, I know you're busy, but it's already December and I'm not growing. At least, I don't see any real difference. Isn't it time, God? Don't you think I've waited patiently? Please help me."
Hi, I'm Helene Williams, and I teach here at the Information School, and I am a real-life librarian and for years worked in collection development and reference and have done story times and all kinds of things. And so I've dealt with banned books for decades, and I'm going to read you a couple of paragraphs from one of my favorite banned books, which is called The Higher Power of Lucky by Susan Patron. Lucky Trimble crouched in a wedge of shade behind the dumpster, her ear near a hole in the paint-chipped wall of Hard Pan's Found Object Wind Chime Museum and Visitor Center. She listened as Short Sammy told the story of how he hit rock bottom, how he quit drinking and found his higher power. Short Sammy's story, of all the rock-bottom stories Lucky had heard at 12-step anonymous meetings, alcoholics, gamblers, smokers, and overeaters, was still her favorite. Sammy told of the day when he had drunk half a gallon of rum, listening to Johnny Cash all morning in his parked '62 Cadillac, then fallen out of the car when he saw a rattlesnake on the passenger seat biting his dog Roy on the scrotum. This book is really about Lucky, a young woman who has lost her mother and her voyage of recovery from that. But that word scrotum is what got this book in trouble. It's the incident of a rattlesnake biting a dog on his scrotum is totally incidental. But libraries ended up banning this book. Patrons complained. What the big issue for me as a teacher is that librarians didn't buy this because they had heard about this word in this children's book and they were afraid people would complain. So there's several layers of banning going on here. There's self-censorship as well as the greater issue of intellectual freedom and letting students read what they want to read and what they need to read and focusing on something that totally isn't the point in a book. So this is why this is one of my favorite examples of a book that should not have been banned. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sarah Evans. I'm a PhD candidate at the College of Education and also a lecturer at the iSchool. And Eliza Dresang was important for me because we had a lot of common areas of interest, including literature and young adults and public libraries and the role that they play in kids' lives. And she was a member of my committee and helping foster my dissertation, and I still miss her. Today I'm going to read from my favorite novel of all time, which is To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. I read it in my 9th grade language arts class, and it was the first book that I really thought was beautiful because it had a great story and characters and humor, but also had a purpose to it and had truths in it that I felt were important. So I'm going to read from the section where Scout has done something crazy at a family reunion, and her Uncle Jack had caught her, and she's nervous about what he's going to tell her dad. Later, when I was supposed to be in bed, I went down the hall for a drink of water and heard Atticus and Uncle Jack in the living room. I shall never marry, Atticus. Why? I might have children. Atticus said, "You've a lot to learn, Jack." I know. Your daughter gave me my first lesson this afternoon. She said I didn't understand children much and told me why. She was quite right, Atticus. She told me how I should have treated her. Oh dear, I'm so sorry I romped on her. Atticus chuckled. She earned it, so don't feel too remorseful. I waited on tenterhooks for Uncle Jack to tell Atticus my side of it, but he didn't. He simply murmured, "Her use of bathroom invectives leaves nothing to the imagination, but she doesn't know the meaning of half she says. She asked me what a whore lady was." Did you tell her? No, I told her about Lord Melbourne. Jack, when a child asks you something, answer him, for goodness sake. But don't make a production of it. Children are children, but they can spot an evasion quicker than adults, and evasion simply muddles them. No, my father mused, you had the right answer this afternoon, but the wrong reasons. Bad language is the stage all children go through, and it dies with time when they learn they're not attracting attention with it. Hot-headedness isn't. Scout's got to learn to keep her head and learn soon with what's in store for her these next few months. She's coming along, though. Jem's getting older, and she follows his example a good bit now. All she needs is assistance sometimes. Atticus, you've never laid a hand on her. I admit that. So far, I've been able to get by with threats. Jack, she minds me as well as she can. Doesn't come up to scratch half the time, but she tries. That's not the answer, said Uncle Jack. No, the answer is she knows, I know, she tries. That's what makes a difference. What bothers me is that she and Jem will have to absorb some pretty ugly things soon. I'm not worried about Jem keeping his head, but Scout would just as soon jump on someone as look at him if her pride's at stake. I waited for my Uncle Jack to break his promise. He still didn't. Atticus, how bad is this going to be? You haven't had too much chance to discuss it. It couldn't be worse, Jack. The only thing we've got is a black man's word against the Ewells. The evidence boils down to you did, I didn't. The jury couldn't possibly be expected to take Tom Robinson's word against the Ewells. Are you acquainted with the Ewells? Uncle Jack said yes, he remembered them. He described them to Atticus, but Atticus said, "You're a generation off. The present ones are the same, though." "What are you going to do then?" "Before I'm through, I intend to jar the jury a bit. I think we'll have a reasonable chance on appeal, though. I really can't tell at this stage, Jack. You know, I'd hoped to get through life without a case of this kind, but John Taylor pointed at me and said, 'You're it.' Let this cut pass from you, eh?" "Right. But do you think I could face my children otherwise? You know what's going to happen as well as I do, Jack, and I hope and pray that I can get Jem and Scout through it without bitterness, and most of all, without catching Maycomb's usual disease. Why reasonable people go stark raving mad when anything involving a Negro comes up is something I don't pretend to understand. I just hope that Jem and Scout come to me for their answers instead of listening to the town. I hope they trust me enough. Jean Louise?" My scalp jumped. I stuck my head around the corner. "Sir?" "Go to bed." I scurried to my room and went to bed. Uncle Jack was a prince of a fellow not to let me down, but I never figured out how Atticus knew I was listening. And it was not until many years later that I realized he wanted me to hear every word he said.
Hi, I'm Andre Evans. I'm reading Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets for part of Fan Book Week. "This way!" he shouted, and we began to run up the stairs into the entrance hall. It was no good hoping to hear anything here. The babble of talk from the Halloween feast was echoing out of the great hall. Harry sprinted up the marble staircase to the first floor, Ron and Hermione clattering behind him. "Harry, what are we—" "Shh!" Harry strained his ears. Distantly, from the floor above, growing fainter still, he heard the voice. "I smell blood! I smell blood!" His stomach lurched. "It's going to kill someone!" he shouted, and ignoring Ron and Hermione's bewildered faces, he ran up the next flight of stairs, 3 at a time, trying to listen over his own pounding footsteps. Harry hurtled around the whole of the second floor, Ron and Hermione panting behind him, not stopping until they turned a corner into the last deserted passage. "Harry, what was that all about?" said Ron, wiping sweat off his face. "I couldn't hear anything." But the look Hermione gave a sudden gasp, pointing down the corridor. "Look!" Something was shining on the wall ahead. They approached slowly, squinting through the darkness. Foot-high words had been daubed on the wall between 2 windows, shimmering in the light cast by the flaming torches. "The Chamber of Secrets has been opened. Enemies of the air, beware."
Hi, I'm Shannon Gilmore, and I'm going to read from Green Eggs and Ham. "I would not, could not, in a tree, not in a car, you let me be. I do not like them in a box, I do not like them with a fox. I do not like them in a house, I do not like them with a mouse. I do not like them here or there, I do not like them anywhere. I do not like green eggs and ham, I do not like them, Sam I am. A train, a train, a train, a train, could you, would you, on a train? Not on a train, not on a tree, not in a car, Sam, let me be. I would not, could not, in a box, I could not, would not, with a fox. I will not eat them with a mouse, I will not eat them in a house. I will not eat them here or there, I will not eat them anywhere. I do not eat green eggs and ham, I do not like them, Sam I am. Say in the dark, here in the dark? Would you, could you in the dark? I would not, could not, in the dark. Would you, could you in the rain? I would not, could not in the rain, not in the dark, not on a train, not in a car, not in a tree, I do not like them, Sam, you see. Not in a house, not in a box, not with a mouse, not with a fox. I will not eat them here or there, I do not like them anywhere. You do not like green eggs and ham, I do not like them, Sam I am. Could you, would you with a goat? I would not, could not with a goat. Would you, could you on a boat? I could not, would not on a boat. I will not with a goat. I will not eat them in the rain. I will not eat them on a train. Not in the dark, not in a tree, not in a car, you let me be. I do not like them in a box. I do not like them with a fox. I will not eat them in a house. I will not eat them with a mouse. I do not like them here or there. I do not like them anywhere. I do not like green eggs and ham. I do not like them, Sam I am.
Hi, my name is Yvette Bayo-Urban, and I'm a doctoral student here at the Information School. I had the pleasure of working with Dr. Eliza Dresang on Project Views, and so I'm very grateful for the time that I got to work with her. And as part of ISC, we're celebrating Banned Books Week and academic freedom in her honor. So I'm going to read Pedagogy of the Oppressed by Paulo Freire because I'm an educator, and I think this book is very important. So here we go. Because love is an act of courage, not of fear. Love is a commitment to other men. No matter where the oppressed are found, the act of love is a commitment to their cause, the cause of liberation. And this commitment, because it is loving, is dialogical. As an act of bravery, love cannot be sentimental. As an act of freedom, it must not serve as a pretext for manipulation. It must generate other acts of freedom. Otherwise, it is not love. Only by abolishing the situation of oppression is it possible to restore the love which a situation has made impossible. If I do not love the world, if I do not love life, then I do not love men. I cannot enter into dialogue. On the other hand, dialogue cannot exist without humility. Naming of the world, through which men constantly recreate that world, cannot be an act of arrogance. Dialogue, as an encounter of men addressed to the common task of learning and acting, is broken if the parties, or one of them, lack humility. How can I dialogue if I always project ignorance onto others and never perceive my own? How can I dialogue if I regard myself as a case apart from other men? It's in whom I cannot recognize the other eyes. How can I dialogue if I consider myself a member of the in-group of pure men, if the owners of truth and knowledge, for whom all non-members are these people, or the great unwashed? How can I dialogue if I start from the premise that naming the world is a task of the elite and the presence of people in history a sign of deterioration, thus to be avoided? How can I dialogue if I am closed to and even offended by the contributions of others?
Hi, I'm Karen Ericson, and I work with Eliza just because she worked down the hall from me, and I was really privileged to work with her. And just to have her so close at hand, it was really nice. And I also worked with her on the Spencer Shaw lecture. Just loved talking to her about children's books, and just loved working with her in general and having tea with her. And just, she's a really special lady. So for the intellectual freedom part and for Banned Books Week, I would like to read from To Kill a Mockingbird, chapter 10. And here I go. So Atticus said to Jim one day, "I'd rather you shot at tin cans in the backyard, but I know you'll go after birds. Shoot all the blue jays you want, if you can hit them. But remember, it's a sin to kill a mockingbird." That was the only time I ever heard Atticus say it was a sin to do something. And I asked Miss Maudie about it. "Your father's right," she said. "Mockingbirds don't do one thing but make music for us to enjoy. They don't eat up people's gardens. They don't nest in corn cribs. They don't do one thing but sing their hearts out for us. That's why it's a sin to kill a mockingbird."
Hi, my name is Cynthia Del Rosario, and I'm the Diversity Programs Advisor here at the Information School at the University of Washington. And I'm honored to be participating in a readout for Eliza Dresang. What I'm going to be reading is actually from Eliza's book, Radical Change, Books for Youth in a Digital Age. So this is an excerpt from a small unit called Diversity in the Global World. Children and young people throughout the United States live in more and more diverse communities. Shifting demographics and an increasingly pluralistic society define who the young people with whom we work and live are and will be. Young people are learning to flourish in an increasingly pluralistic society with many parallel cultures. Radically changed multiple perspectives are incorporated more and more into daily life. Voices silenced in the past are increasingly given the opportunity to be heard and acknowledged by others. So Eliza's concept of radical change embraces the culture of inclusion that we're building here at the iSchool. Racial and ethnic and other types of diversity enriches all of us by offering us opportunities to view and understand and engage with the world in ways that gives us new opportunity to see challenges in a different way and discover and apply solutions in innovative and relevant ways. And yet, given this, the gap between the haves and has not is still growing wider and deeper. So Eliza's call for radical change asks all of us, but particularly those of us who are in the field of information, to help solve these problems, help build solutions by building communities and cultures that are affirmative and inclusive and that seek a more equitable and just world. Just thank you, Eliza. Radical change is your legacy.